This is Steve Zeltzer with Workweek and Pacifica. And today we're going to look at the developments in Argentina and uh, the government of Milei, who's won the election in Argentina, who he is, what brought him to the fore, and the rise of fascism in Argentina, what it means to the working class and working people internationally, because Milei is connected with workers, with fascists around the world. And joining us is Guillermo Kane. He is a member of the Workers' Party, and also he's a member of the Buenos Aires Parliament, representing the Workers' Party and part of a left working class united front politically in Argentina. So welcome to our show.
Thank you, Steve.
So first of all, why don't we talk about who Milei is and where did he come from and what his program is?
Milei is a political figure of very recent appearance in Argentina, of the last 5 years at most. He was a frequent television personality, commenting on economic and politics. He is a very far-right, so-called libertarian, but actually, a very conservative liberal, linked to political formations that have had relations with the Menem government in the 90s and the military dictatorship in the 70s. And promoting privatizations. He did a big campaign for dollarization and so on. For example, in 2022, which was a year of very meteoric rise of his media presence in the country, after he had presented himself for the first time to parliamentary elections in 2021, he was the economist with most airtime on the national TV channel. So he's definitely someone that sectors of the bourgeoisie have favored and have given a lot of air to try to channel a very big social and economic crisis in our country and a very big political crisis of the traditional parties of the bourgeoisie, including Peronism, which of course has a leading role in unions, has a relationship with many social movements, has co-opted much of the traditional left in Argentina, and headed the last government with Alberto Fernandez as president, which ended in a very severe economic disaster. So in a way, you could say that Peronism's fall was as much the central political event of the elections last year, and Milei was someone who was able to channel this in his favor because he was not presented as having been part of any of the traditional parties that have been governing in the last 40 years and which have led to a new debt crisis, very serious inflation and devaluation of the peso, and growing poverty. Around half of the population in Argentina is under the poverty line. Over 30% is under the extreme poverty line. So we're facing a very serious economic crisis. And Milei, who won around 30% of the direct vote in a very fragmented election, was able to win the ballotage or the runoff against Peronism, who had a very right-wing pro-IMF candidate called Sergio Massa, who basically campaigned saying he was the candidate who had the most direct line with Washington, D.C., with the IMF, to be able to handle the economic crisis. So they were also running on a very reactionary ticket, so to speak.
Well, there was a United Front candidate from the left, and actually she was threatened by Milei. They physically threatened people, him and his supporters. What was the kind of political debates that took place in that election?
Okay, we had different ballots in the left United Front. On our side, the Partido Obrero, the Workers' Party, promote that the existing left front, which we think is very important, because it has been able to become a reference point in elections, in winning parliamentary spaces for the revolutionary left, of four Trotskyist parties in Argentina for over a decade. We think this common work also has to be related to common work in the unions, in the mass workers' fronts, and that it should be open through congresses and plenaries for this sort of front to not only have an electoral or parliamentary expression. And we've also, there have been different expressions of relative compromises with Peronism in regards to the appearance of ultra-right, which we think are a mistake. We think that these so-called progressive bourgeois governments are what have caused this crisis that the ultra-right is able to exploit, and that concessions or flirtation, political flirtation, so to speak, with Kirchnerismo, with these progressives, are a mistake. So with the PTS, which is the party of Miriam Bregman, who won the presidential candidature last year, we have had differences along these lines, which we have debated publicly without threatening the unity of a front which has working class independence as its center. Now, what's going on?
Well, before we go to that, why don't we talk about his coming to power? Because I know a lot of people were shocked that he did come to power. He has a picture of him with a chainsaw, that he's going to go implement his program. And as soon as coming in office, he threatened people and said that there could be no more protests, that he was going to implement his program. But apparently that didn't work out.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know what you want to comment in particular, but let's say that there's a big difference, even though Milei's program has always been clearly reactionary, there's no doubt about that. What he said during the campaign and what he's doing in government are still two very different things. He had a very extreme sort of libertarian anarcho-capitalist line during the campaign, saying he was going to close the central bank, he was going to go direct to dollarization. He said he was going to put a bomb in the central bank during the campaign. That was his line. And not only has he not closed it, but he's brought back to run it the same finance minister that there was under the Macri government, with a more traditional, let's say, conservative right government, 2015 to 2019. And the reason he's brought back the same economic team as the previous right that he used to denounce as being part of the traditional parties or part of the swamp, so to speak, in Trumpian terms, is because these are the people linked to BlackRock, linked to the big sectors of finance capital, who are also the biggest private holders of Argentinian debt. So he's campaigned as an outsider, and what he did once he got to power is he's pretty much opened up his cabinet to several sectors of the concentrated bourgeoisie, both international and in some cases local, to try to, even though he's a very minority government in the sense that he does not have many political positions in the state, he's been able to win the runoff, but he's an extreme minority in Congress, and he does not hold one city government or one provincial government in the whole country. So he's an extreme minority.
Isolated politically.
Yeah, he's very isolated politically. He would depend on some sort of coalition, but he has decided not to form any coalition, any official political coalition. He has hand chosen a few government officials that come from Macrism, that come from Peronism, but has not made any sort of formal coalition. And what he's looked for is a sort of block with important bourgeois sectors, offering them very direct access to things they want in terms of being able to concentrate their economic groups, in terms of deregulating, in terms of directly giving them state-owned resources. For example, he has given Paolo Rocca and Techint, which is an important company, partly Italian, partly Argentinian, that is one of the bigger oil duct producers and metal workers producing companies in the world. He is, and who also own a medium-sized oil company, Tecpetrol. He has given them the main position, the CEO of the state participated, not fully state-owned oil company, YPF. He is promising lithium to Elon Musk. He is giving BlackRock the finance position in the cabinet. So he's definitely trying to offer very concentrated sectors of the bourgeoisie the idea that his government is going to go for very profound reforms that they are interested in, and that giving him political stability while being a very minority or isolated government and carrying out economic reforms, which are a very already a terrible clash against the conditions of the working class, a terrible blow to the conditions of the working class. He is trying to give himself some stability or a structure in this alliance with bourgeois sector. He is also very linked to reactionary repressive sectors. His vice president, Victoria Villarroel, who is having something of a political crisis with Milei as well, but she comes from the military family in Argentina, and very specifically, the military officers tried for genocide under the last military dictatorship. She is the daughter of one of these people, and she is a lawyer who has dedicated her life to getting legal impunity for these military officers tried for the kidnapping and murder of 30,000 Argentinians during the last military dictatorship, which was a central issue in the very recent demonstration, March 24th, which is the anniversary of the coup d'etat in 1976. But Patricia Bullrich, the security minister, who was in Macri's party, the PRO, was a presidential candidate for that party, is a person directly related to the Mossad and the DEA, and who had already had this position of being in charge of security forces during the Macri government, and had been at the forefront of several repressive events where demonstrators had, for example, been killed in the Patagonia and other some such events. So he is also trying to give himself this sort of presentation of that he will bring order through a militarization against any sort of social protest.
And Milei went to Davos and told the capitalists he was going to be successful in implementing his program, and they should follow his lead. He also went to Israel and supported the Zionist regime in Israel. And Israel has an important role in Argentina in supporting the military junta, which was brought in by the United States. So the U.S. government was involved in the military coup in 1976 in Argentina. It seems those forces have a history, and that Milei wants to support that agenda of those forces in Argentina. Is that the case?
Oh, yes, definitely. He's a big fan of Netanyahu in Israel. He's a big defender of him. He's even said he's considering converting to Judaism as part of that support. Of course, this has nothing to do with the Jewish people, but with a support for Zionism, which is very spread out in the far right. You've seen this with this supposed anti-Semitic demonstrations headed by people like Le Pen or the far right heirs of fascism and Nazism in Europe. So this is very much the case in Milei's formation here as well. He's also a big fan of Zelensky. He said he wants to organize a congress in support of the pro-NATO Ukrainian troops in Argentina, a regional congress. And he has a more complicated relationship with the United States government because he's a very open supporter of Trump, which I think the Biden officers in the IMF and in the Treasury today are not that crazy about Milei. They've had a cooler relationship with him, but he was at the APAC meeting in the States, exchanging pleasantries with Donald Trump a few weeks ago. And to give you an idea of how crazy his discourse is, in that speech in Davos, he actually said that most of the people present were socialists at the forum in Davos, and that they had become like influenced by woke ideology, that they had to break with all this influence of communism that they were all under. So this is the sort of level of course, a deranged personality, a far right conspiratorial, crazy discourse, but a very real threat for the working class. You talked before about fascism, and of course, in popular terms, we're out here on the street. We say, let's smash these fascists, and this is just the way any of us are talking, and it's a very real danger. And we are talking in Argentina about the need for a general strike to defeat this profoundly, and of course, it's profoundly an enemy of workers, is what I mean to say, profoundly opposed to work. But we do not think it is the same as classical fascism as a political formation, in the sense that I think, in common with several of the far-right formations which have either come to power or had some electoral breakthroughs in different countries in recent years, even with the differences each of them may have, Milei in particular has no shock troops. He does not have sectors of the masses of petty bourgeois, lumpen, and so on, organized to smash the working class. He does not even have a party. He has mostly a media and a social media presence organized, and is an electoral candidate who has, to this point, had a very loose coalition of forces around him. So he is at this point mostly centered in using state repression, or trying to use state repression and legal persecution against working class activists and sector of the peoples who are standing back against him. Of course, this does not mean he is not dangerous. It does not mean he could not mutate politically into something else eventually. And there are fascist or similar to fascist sectors in his movement and in his positions. But it is important to differentiate exactly what we are facing, because the task now is not to defend physically against a fascist force that is parading through the streets of Argentina. The task is now not to prepare for clandestine resistance against a military dictatorship, which we have had, but this is not the current situation. But it is a very far-right, very anti-workers government, which has a profound division in the local bourgeoisie, which is making it difficult for Milei to stabilize. He has a Congress where he is a minority, where his omnibus bill that he's
You broke up. Oh, yeah.
was rejected. His decree a big decree that changed 300 laws was also rejected by Congress. The bourgeois justice system has called many of the bills he has passed illegal. So I think this gives an idea that the bourgeoisie itself does not favor a full political regime change like the one Milei is trying to organize. And of course, the working class is not defeated either. So if he could pass all the legal reforms he had sent, he would have tried to install civilian dictatorship, possibly similar to the one Alberto Fujimori had in Peru in the 90s, closing down Congress and concentrating the sum of power, but he has not been able to muster these political conditions as of yet.
And initially, on coming to power, he and his Social Security minister, security minister, tried to prevent rallies and demonstrations. The Workers' Party and the left organized the first demonstration to challenge that. That was an important development because there had been no physical, mobilization against the government. What happened in that, and how did that affect the continuing growth of opposition to him in the working class?
Well, yeah, the PO, our organization, was very direct, saying that we did not need to wait for the blows to start coming from the government to rally against his open calls to devaluate salaries, to privatize, and to attack labor conquest and so on. And we called for an immediate demonstration, and this call was seconded by different working class organizations of unemployed workers, unions, human rights organization, other parties of the left. And the day we chose was the December 20th, which was 10 days after he took office, and which was the anniversary of the popular rebellion in 2001, which ousted the De la Rua government. So it's an important day here in Argentina. And this led to a very direct polemic between Milei, his security minister Bullrich, who you were referring to, and their government with the leaders of the PO, saying that they would not allow this demonstration, saying that it was illegal, even though, of course, demonstrating is a constitutional right in Argentina, the bourgeois constitution. Their constitution, not ours, but we're going to hold them up to it if this is the legal basis of the political regime in the country. And so they did a very strong campaign to try to install fear, even with like speakers in the railway stations, policemen on the trains. I don't know how to explain this. The federal state has apps on your phones where you have like your personal documentation, and there were things that said, if you are on welfare and you go to this march, we will take away welfare. So a very extreme process of trying to install fear, and still the demonstration was held. There were thousands of us. They put up police troopers, but we overcame the police troopers and we made it to the Plaza de Mayo and had a first rally. And that was the same day that he announced on TV his big decree, which changed 300 laws. And what happens when he finished the press conference that same day after our rally, announcing this decree, spontaneous demonstrations were held all over the country called cacerolazos, pot banging demonstrations that start in the houses of people and they start gathering on the streets. So on the same day, we held this march, which he tried to forbid. There were some comrades detained by the police. There were some clashes, but we held the rally anyway. He announced his big decree, and by that night, by midnight, there were thousands of people on the streets all over the country. This more spontaneous movement has led to a network of activists and neighbors and so on that have formed assemblies in many neighborhoods all over the country. So I definitely think that we could definitely say that this rally where the PO and other sectors of the left were very quick to try to organize demonstrations against the government was like a first step, which also forced a few days later the Peronist-led unions to have to call some demonstrations, one partial national strike of 12 hours, and some limited actions. Though clearly the trade union bureaucracy is trying to limit the level of demonstration because the Peronist party has said openly that their line is to not confront Milei, but to let Milei govern, that labor reform is necessary, and that if people don't like the Milei government, they can vote them in the next election. But they are in no way calling to stand up against them, and the unions are very much acting very timidly, even though wages are being destroyed by the level of devaluation. We had 54% inflation in 2 months in January and February, and wages have been under no conditions been able to get to that level. And there are being layoffs everywhere. For example, this week it was very violent. We're having layoffs in the federal state on all levels in all sort of organisms. And Milei said on, I think it was Wednesday, it was probably yesterday, or no, Tuesday night. He said there have been 50,000 layoffs in the state, and we will cancel contracts with different employees for 70,000 more positions in the next days to go. And on that same day, the center-left Peronist trade union of public employees, ATE, had said that they were canceling a strike to try to show good favor to get a negotiation going with Milei. He clearly is not interested in any negotiation, or at least a very profound conflict will have to be raised to force him to some level of negotiation. Now they're saying that next Wednesday this strike will be reconvened. But the situation is that yesterday we had clashes in public offices all over the country because of these levels of layoffs that are happening. So we have a lot of decentralized conflicts with unemployed workers because they're cutting off food to the soup kitchens. They're throwing people out of their even very limited social welfare. We are having layoffs. Wages are being destroyed through devaluation and inflation. And we don't have a general strike, and we don't have a plan of action of the union. So what we are promoting from the PLO, and we're discussing with the left and with these popular assemblies, with combative and class struggle sectors in the union, with the Piquetero unemployed workers movement, and so on, is the need for a national workers' assembly, joining together rank and file delegates of union, of unemployed workers organization, popular assemblies, other sectors in struggle to try to unify conflicts on a national scale, give it a common political platform against the government. And we'll see. As of yet, there have been many discussions among this. It has not yet been able to be organized. Wednesday, there was a meeting at the SUTNA, which is the National Tire Manufacturing Workers Union, which is headed by the PO. And we think maybe we will have a breakthrough this week. 1st of May, apart from being International Day of the Working Class, maybe we will be able to organize a national workers' assembly to try to give a center to the ongoing demonstrations. We have had recently very massive demonstrations against the government on 8th of March, International Women's Day, a government that has said it wants to make abortion illegal again, which is a very hard one, very recent hard one, right by women in Argentina, very important movement. In the 24th of March, which, as I said, is the anniversary of the coup d'etat, a government that denies the genocide or justifies the genocide of the military dictatorship, saying it was a justified war against left-wing guerrilla organizations that they consider terrorist organizations, and saying it was a dirty war but a necessary one, and so on. And the 24th of March, there were hundreds of thousands of people last Sunday in all the country. So there's definitely a strong opposition. But as I said, Peronism will not lead this opposition that is in the streets to victory, and we need to form a leadership with the left and all the sectors of the working class that are in struggle.
And I was watching on TV, it was live, your demonstration protesting the Milei government. And Milei was there in the police headquarters looking at all these screens like he was in control of things. And of course, he was holding his head because he could see that he wasn't in control of things. The demonstrations were taking place, and he had lost control. And at the same time, he was attacking the union officials, the Peronist union officials, saying that they were fake and they could not do anything. So he kind of like provoked them in the first general strike by his actions to attack them.
Absolutely. Yes. He's constantly provoking. This is his sort of political method, which is strange. If he offered like a platform to the bourgeois opposition of going for a labor reform, a pension reform, and privatizations, they could probably all reach an agreement of some sort. But his method is of constant political provocations and trying to unilaterally impose things, and this is not allowing him to advance in the reforms under the conditions he is looking for as of yet. We will see how things advance. As I said, important sectors of the bourgeoisie say we need these labor reforms, we need to attack working class rights, but this they've been so ambitious, his reform programs, between one decree and this omnibus law, they changed 1,100 laws they wanted to change, which included all sorts of things, which include inter-bourgeois clashes over structural differences of the economy. It caused it to have to defend itself because it attacked its control of health programs, among other things. So it was just so ambitious it could not reach even sectors that are open to negotiate with the Malay government at the expenses of workers. Were not able to vote this for him. He is now saying that he wants to put together again a coalition or an agreement around these sort of labor reforms. He wants to sign it on May 25th, which is like our Independence Day, so to speak. And he wants to sign it with the governors, but this is still remains to be seen. This week,
You're breaking up.
oh, there you are. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. You broke up for a while. I couldn't hear you.
There must have been some problem with the Wi-Fi.
Again, it's breaking up. Maybe you can go off screen.
Which led to protests and led to also these bourgeois parties saying they have not been part of the discussion and don't want to take political responsibility for these cutbacks. So it still remains to be seen. And as I said, there's a big opposition to many of Milei's policies, and his austerity cutbacks in the budget, for example, have made even the deans of public universities say that they could probably not function beyond May if they don't receive an extra budget. So classes are starting in the national universities, which will very likely become centers also of demonstration and struggle against the government. So we're definitely looking at a very hectic period in the class struggle, and it's key for us to be able to organize a plan of action, joining all these sectors: students, artists, pensioners, employed workers, unemployed workers, these popular assemblies in neighborhoods, which often have more middle class sectors of the large cities to try to join a common movement structured around the working class to defeat the Milei government plans.
And you also were involved, your organization, in an international call with organizations in Italy and around the world, in Japan, a global day of action against Zionism, against the genocide in Gaza, uniting the world working class to stop this U.S.-supported Israeli genocide. This perspective of internationalism, how do you see that linked to the struggle in Argentina of the working class there?
Oh, there's no struggle against the bourgeoisie without a common struggle with the international proletariat, with the working class of the whole world. It's for us, it's one and the same. It is clear that this offensive of Milei's is being followed closely internationally by workers and by the bourgeoisie, because he is offering the idea, he's trying to sell everybody on the idea that it can be popular to destroy working class conditions and working class rights. So we think that Argentina is an important showdown on an international scale, but it is not an Argentine problem. This is part of the agenda that the bourgeoisie is discussing to destroy our rights. And of course, capitalist crisis is trying to be solved, particularly the crisis of hegemony of the central imperialist powers in the United States, not only through an offensive on working class rights and on the resources of colonial countries, but through reinstating a military offensive internationally. And of course, the US and European-backed genocide in Gaza is part of that. We also see the deployment of NATO and its inter-imperialist clash with Putin's Russia in Ukraine as part of this sort of policy internationally, and of course the pressure and the military escalation with China in the same way. The United States, which has been following in economical terms and in geopolitical terms, but is still a dominant power, is definitely been leading a level of militarization internationally. So for us, it is the strategic issue for revolutionaries in this epoch is opposing both sides in the Ukrainian war, is siding with the Palestinian resistance and giving military support to them, defending the right to defend against the genocide, of course, a ceasefire, but more profoundly showing the character of the state of Israel as a colonial enclave in the Middle East. And we think this is the strategic points. And so the action on February 24th, which the comrades of SICOBAS, a very important combative union in Italy, and other comrades, the Turkish organization CEP, Workers' Socialist Party, the communist left current NAR in Greece, and other organizations that we were able to agree and demonstrate in each of our countries on that day was part of work that we have been doing in the last few years to try to favor a regroupment of all those forces in the international working class movement that have a principled position in these very serious, very catastrophic events that we are living through, and that the reaction to which is a point of political awakening for young people and workers across the world. So we need to be able to build the bonds of international struggle or an organization to give a party, to give an international, to give a channel to thousands of young people and workers who are taking to the streets against imperialism, against Zionism, and against militarism. So yes, Buenos Aires was one of the points of that international demonstration, even though, of course, as you had said, demonstrations are supposedly illegal or not authorized by the government, face police repression, and of course we have a very hectic agenda of the local struggle in these days.
And the issue of multipolarism, there are some organizations that say that the left, the working class, should support while opposing militarization of Asia, the left should support China. And China actually was threatened by Milei that he was going to stop relations with China, even though China is a big exporter of product from. What happened with China, and what is the role of
Importer,
China
yeah.
export? I mean, their grain that's export from Argentina to
Uh,
China.
yeah, yeah. Exactly.
And what happened in the relationship of Milei to China? Because he had took a hardline position that China was the enemy and that he was going to break relations with China.
Well, it's one of those things that he said during the campaign and then tries to fall back from. It's very confusing because first he said he would have no relationship with a communist country, where he included not only China but also, for example, Lula's, which also is a very important economic partner of Argentina on very levels of commerce, but also of industrial production and so on. And then they said, okay, but it's the companies that have the relationship and not the state. We're talking about political relationships. They tried to backtrack on that. And then when the financial problems began in the first month of their government, they actually tried to reinstate relationships with the Xi Jinping government to execute a swap, a currency swap that had been agreed up with the previous government. So they were really much more pragmatic and less ideological than they declaimed in their spots or in their videos, you know. But so but the BRICS, but what he did do is say that the Argentine government is going to resign the position in the BRICS that the previous government was negotiating. This he did. He said he favors a bloc with the US and he counters this to BRICS, which of course is not the position by many of the members of BRICS, who, even with all the speeches about multipolarism and so on, India, one of the BRICS, is even part of the Quad, a military alliance, a military and naval alliance headed by the United States in Asia. So this BRICS is very far from being an anti-imperialist um, or anti-colonialist sort of coalition. It is very contradictory. The idea that it is replacing the UN, the IMF, the other traditional US led international organizations, we think is absolutely deluded. Um, it is very contradicted within them. And Brazil, and for example, here in Latin America, though it has its diplomatic clashes with the U.S., in no way is promoting an anti-imperialist transformation or clash with the United States, with the Western European countries in the region. So we think there is more bourgeois nationalist bluff than real the reality of a multipolar world or anything like that being promoted by these countries or governments.
And this situation in the working class, I mean, Brazil, Argentina are very wealthy countries, large amounts of resources. I mean, there's hunger in Argentina when you have such massive production of foodstuffs, of
Yeah.
meat and other products. Is this radicalizing the working class? And also, is this, you have Pollo Obrero who've been fighting for food, for the government to provide food. Is this economic crisis radicalizing the working class? And also, are the Peronist bureaucrats losing control of the working class because they refuse to really take on the government and bring this reactionary government down?
Well, let's see. This new government has taken power about almost 3 months ago. Um, so there's still a lot of development to go forward, so to speak. A lot of things have to happen still. Um, but and The Peronist government, in the media presentation of it, and in Milei's political campaign in particular, was presented as left wing. So he has been able to, I think, in a way maybe similar to Trump's campaigns against the Democratic Party. to have a very confusing campaign between what socialism or left-wing idea is to these bourgeois progressive governments, which have been a disaster and a failure. So this has been used for right-wing demagogy by Milei and by a large sector of the bourgeoisie. Now, this does not mean that there are not sectors that are radicalizing, and because they are, and there have been thousands in the streets, and this idea of forbidding demonstrations, they have not been able to hold it down for a day. And a lot of these are people who are not being active and who have become active in the last few months. This March, last Sunday, I can tell you that the columns of our organization had hundreds of new young people in the streets. So I definitely think that we might be on the start of a new process of political radicalization. And these contradictions that capitalist crisis and the attack of capitalists to try to solve their crisis through a deep attack against the working class in Argentina are absolutely grotesque. Argentina produces enough food to feed over 10 times its population. We have 48 million people, and the calculations are that we produce food for over 400 million people. Much of it is exported to other parts of the world, sold at a rate in dollars, of course, of levels that an Argentine worker cannot see or pay for. And what they do is they impose the prices of the international market and not the local production prices for food in Argentina. And in some cases, food in Argentina that we produce here is more expensive in Argentina than in Western Europe. So, and what happens is much of this agricultural production, vegetables, fruits, and so on, if they can't sell it, is destroyed rather than give it to hungry people, soup kitchens, and so on. So for the local bourgeoisie and definitely for the Milei government, not distributing food to the soup kitchens, denying access to food, has to do with defending the capitalist logic of how this market should run, and particularly production of commodities for the international market. So the colonial place of Argentina, the International Division of Labor, more than trying to, of course, solve the social needs or answer to the social needs that exist in Argentina. This is a huge contradiction. Argentina has oil. Argentina has natural gas. Argentina is one of the countries with a lot, together with Bolivia and Chile and the region, there's a large presence of lithium, which of course, is a key component to many of the most important technological sectors that are being developed, from electronic cars to cell phones to tablets and so on. But there's no industrial production of these batteries in Argentina. There's no plan for this. All they are negotiating is just the mass mining and get the mineral out of the country without any plan for an industrial development, which would, of course, change the economic and social reality of the country. So it is clear, at least to us, that these capitalist forces and governments can give no future to a country that is, as you say, very rich in natural resource, has a large working class, has an important industry in relation to the region, but this industry is closing down. We have a 6% drop in the gross national product in the last few months. There's an important recession being underway through the policies of this government, which is saying they want to control inflation through a very hard recession. Milei's speech 2 nights ago. I'll tell you one more thing about his speech, which is interesting to get an idea of where he's facing his enemies. But he was saying, we are destroying the presence of the Argentine peso, so people have to take the dollars they have away and spend those. We are liquidating the wages, so we will reorganize the economy around the savings in dollars that a part of the population has been able to save in some other problem. He's very openly talking about an economic program of destroying wages as a basis for the bourgeois reorganization they are promoting. He also said, this is what I wanted to mention, that public education makes people stupider, and that a proof of this is that in the economic studies college in the University of Buenos Aires, they read people like Marx. So he's openly declared not only Marx as an enemy, which is of course obvious from his political point of view, but it's interesting that he points it out publicly, but public universities as a whole. So we definitely think we have a large social sector to organize and to call to struggle, and we are working very hard at organizing for these weeks. Our political slogan that the Central Committee of the Partido Obrero Workers' Party has voted is organize the general strike to defeat Milei. This is the key task of the moment, and against the austerity of Milei and the governors of the bourgeois opposition, who are carrying out this austerity measures in their own districts as well.
And in the United States as well, there are some that have said that there has to be a general strike against the attack on the American working class, against the genocide, and the refusal of the trade union bureaucracy to organize any mobilization against the rise of fascism in the United States. And it seems that the similarities in many ways of the struggle in Argentina are reflected internationally and other struggles around the world for the working class, that the independent mobilization of the working class is an international question, not just a question in Argentina, but the United States and in Germany and Europe, as we drive towards world war, as the capitalists drive really towards world war. Now, the last question is the issue of military coups, because of course there's a long history of American intervention in Latin America, the Monroe Doctrine, which they want to control countries in Latin America, and also the intervention of the U.S. in coups in Bolivia, in Peru, and possibly Colombia. And of course, if the IMF policies don't work, one of the steps is a military coup to implement them. Do you see the threat of a U.S. military intervention in Argentina, as has happened in other countries in the region?
I don't think it's posed as an immediate problem. I think the bourgeois forces that have disputed the presidential campaign all vied for the support of the U.S. Embassy, of the U.S. government, of the IMF, including the Peronist candidates, who have a long history of respecting agreements with the IMF and relationship with the U.S. government, but who, to be very clear on this, after this period of other coups, both parliamentary coups and direct military coups in the region, chose their most right-wing pro-Washington men as their last three presidential candidates. So we don't have in Argentina, at this moment, a situation where they're using the military directly to govern, but what they are trying to do, the Milei government, is to reinstate the military as a security force for repression. They are doing this with the excuse of drug cartels, which are becoming more violent and controlling territory more openly in Rosario, which is an important city of Argentina, also in areas of the greater Buenos Aires area. So drug cartel-related assassinations are being used as an excuse to militarize these areas and to use direct deployment of the army. And Milei definitely has political restoration of the role of the armed forces as part of his agenda. But the truth is, up to this moment, bourgeois democracy is the way that both the local bourgeoisie and U.S. imperialism prefer and think is more stable to govern. And even the ideas of Milei of sort of suspending Congress or concentrating power in the presidential figure have not been favored neither by the US government nor by most sectors of the local bourgeoisie. So this is the current situation, but this so-called democratic government is still very highly repressive, is jailing workers who demonstrate, who organize, who go to strikes, is opening up legal cases against them, is repressing with police on the streets. So it's happened with many so-called democratic governments. Its character is that of using state repression against workers, and we're facing up against this. Of course, we cannot discard the danger of a military coup in the future, depending on how the class struggle unfolds. And of course, it is very important to point out that US imperialism, which tries to present itself as an international promoter of democracy and tries to show its colonial militaristic adventures as part of a struggle, an international struggle to promote democracy, which is absolutely absurd, has been in our country, in the history of our country, and in the recent history of the region, like neighboring Bolivia, the promoter of military coup d'etats. So it's very important to keep that in mind, and in particular in a discussion which will be seen mostly by comrades in the United States.
And what do people in Argentina think about the rise of Trump and the Trump movement? Do they see the similarity between Trump and Milei?
Yeah. Well, actually, a funny thing is when Trump actually first came to power, Cristina Kirchner talked about how similar he was to them. For example, because talking about economic protectionism and how the big media did not favor him, but he won anyway. So trying to sort of reflect herself in his image. But I think we've seen Trump come to power. We've seen Bolsonaro in Brazil and other similar governments international, Meloni in Italy for sure, and maybe the electoral rise of parties like Vox in Spain and so on, and we've of course been following these things, and one thing that was not surprising but definitely caught I think the attention was how fast they were able to channel a political and electoral growth in Argentina. Milei was practically an unknown 4 years ago, and with a big media presence and with a big backing of certain bourgeois sectors to try to channel unrest and anger against the political regime through a pro-establishment figure, even if he presents himself as anti-establishment or anti-traditional parties. Milei was able to give to take political power. So it's different from Trump because he is not at the front of a Republican Party. He does not have the level of probably like neo-Nazi, Ku Klux Klan, and so on, sort of formations that do not have the structure in Argentina. So it has its differences from Bolsonaro as well, who had a more direct support of a politically organized wing of the armed forces in Brazil, of the evangelist churches, and so on. So these sectors seem to play a bigger role, and they have their differences, but they are very much part of the same international movement and favor each other openly. You've seen Trump present Milei in the recent APEC meeting as the guy who has said he's going to make Argentina great again, so we have to support him. And they speak niceties of each other permanently. And Bolsonaro has sent his son to the rally where Milei took office. So they are very much part of a common international movement with whatever differences that the politics of each country, of course, have.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for joining us on Workweek in Pacifica. I thought it's important that people in the United States and internationally understand the political developments in Argentina. They are important for the working class, not only in Argentina, but workers all around the world. So thanks for joining us. And there has to be more solidarity between American workers and workers in Argentina. And the first step is to educate American workers about what is going on with the working class and the struggle in Argentina. So thanks for joining us.